Competition is a basic element of human meaning and human purpose. Many of us, we love sports, we watch sports, we play sports because it fulfills a basic need for the competitive spirit and the need to belong to something greater than ourselves. In a messy world, we often turn to the purity of sports to cheer for something that represent us and our values and where we come from. When criminals pollute the purity of sports by manipulating competition, it doesn't just imperil the integrity of sports betting markets, it imperils the integrity of sport itself and everything that sports represent to us, hard work, determination, and fairness. And when that happens, the Department of Justice will step in to protect what is a sacred institution of American life. And that's what we're doing here today. We are stepping in, and our office is announcing criminal charges against 26 defendants that we allege perpetrated a transnational criminal scheme to fix NCAA Division I men's basketball games, as well as Professional Chinese Basketball Association games. In the indictment and related filings that we unsealed today, we allege an extensive international criminal conspiracy of NCAA players, alumni, and professional bettors who fixed games across the country and poisoned the American spirit of competition for monetary gain. I encourage everyone to read the indictment, which was unsealed this morning. It alleges violations of sports bribery and fraud laws, but in its essence, this is a prosecution of the criminal corruption of collegiate athletics. And as we allege in the indictment, this was a scheme that spanned 3 years and eventually enveloped 17 NCAA Division I men's programs, dozens of college athletes, and fixed games. I'll speak for a moment about the indictment and encourage everyone to read it. It will spell out in detail the scheme. I will give an overview of it with 2 qualifications. The first is, at this stage, these are just allegations. Every defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. And second, again, I am just giving a sketch, an overview of the conspiracy. This conspiracy, we allege, originated on the other side of the world, in China, in 2022, with Antonio Blakeney, a former LSU All-American college basketball player and former NBA Chicago Bull player, who, with his co-defendants, Marvis Fairley and Shane Hennon, first colluded to fix Professional Chinese Basketball Association games. I presume some of you are familiar with the world of sports betting, but I'll give you just a brief sense of the concept here. You can bet on sports to win or lose, but you can also bet on games in terms of whether a team will win or lose by a certain amount, and that's called a point spread. The scheme here was the defendants would identify a game in which a corrupted player had a team that was favored to lose, and then they would bribe said player to deliberately underperform so that his team would lose by more than they were favored to. They would bet for them to not cover the point spread. They started this scheme, again, with the Chinese Basketball Association, where Mr. Blakeney was playing. And Mr. Fairley, Mr. Hennon, and Mr. Blakeney eventually made a lot of money. Mr. Blakeney was a standout star in the Chinese Basketball Association. He was averaging 32 points a game at the moment that this conspiracy started. In the first game, he scored 11 points. And they didn't cover the spread. And Mr. Fairley and Mr. Hennon, who were professional sports bettors, would then wager substantial amounts of money based on this fixed game. The scheme proved lucrative. Mr. Hennon, we allege, texted a Confederate that the only things certain in life were, quote, death, taxes, and Chinese basketball. And because it proved profitable, they decided to take their operation stateside to the world of NCAA Division I men's basketball. At this point in time, we allege that the conspiracy enlisted other leaders and fixers: Jalen Smith, Roderick Winkler, and Alberto Liriano. They picked these men because they were well connected in the world of college basketball. They knew the players. Many of them were players themselves. They were alumni. They were trainers. They were recruiters. They were networkers. They were people of influence. And because of that influence, they added gravitas and legitimacy to the scheme. And they were able to recruit players on NCAA Division I basketball teams to fix games. And how the scheme worked is Mr. Fairley, Mr. Hennon, and these other leaders would bribe NCAA basketball players to the tune of $10,000 to $30,000 per game. The player would then agree to deliberately underperform in the game in which his team was favored to lose by a certain amount of points. They would then try to lose the game by more than that amount. So, for example, if a team was favored to lose by 4 points, the player would receive a bribe to underperform so that his team would lose more than that. They did so with carefully orchestrated FaceTime calls to obscure and prevent their communications from being intercepted and recorded. They recruited other players. They had players recruit their teammates. And this scheme and this conspiracy eventually mushroomed. It eventually enveloped 17 NCAA Division I programs, 39 players, and 29 games that we allege were either fixed or attempted to be fixed. I'm not going to go through every team, school, and game, but I think you all get the point. This was a massive scheme. It enveloped the world of college basketball. And it included conferences such as the Big East, the Atlantic 10 Conference, the Sun Belt, the Horizon League. It involved games against nationally ranked programs. It involved games in the playoffs of conference championships. It was a significant corruption of the integrity of sports. Once a player received a bribe, Mr. Faley and Mr. Hennon would then place substantial amounts of money to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars per game to enrich themselves, to the tune of an aggregate loss of millions of dollars in fraudulent sports bets on bribed and fixed games. As we allege, this was a significant and rampant corruption of college athletics. I'll talk to you more about the significance of this case in a moment, but for now, I'll turn it over to FBI Deputy Director Andrew Bailey. Pleased to have you here, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Good morning. FBI Deputy Director Andrew Bailey. I want my presence here to emphasize the FBI's role in the investigation of a point-shaving and sports bribery conspiracy that spanned multiple years, crossed state lines, and extended internationally, involving NCAA men's college basketball programs. An investigation that led to the indictments that we've announced today. I'll take the next few minutes to reaffirm the FBI's unwavering commitment to protecting the American people and highlight the exceptional work of the FBI teams whose dedication and professionalism made these indictments possible. Over the past 2 years, the FBI's Philadelphia field office has conducted a wide-ranging investigation into a point-shaving conspiracy involving at least 15 NCAA men's college basketball teams. To date, several individuals have already been charged and held accountable. Today, as a result of the exemplary work of our Philadelphia field office, 20 additional defendants were indicted for their alleged roles in this scheme. Those who believed they could operate in the shadows, defraud the public, and escape justice were wrong. The Department of Justice and this FBI will not tolerate the exploitation of the American institutions for criminal profit, nor will we allow victims of this crime, the fans who fill the arenas, the students and alumni who believe in fair competition, and the American public who expect integrity in the institutions they love, to be denied justice. I'm proud to stand here today because of the outstanding work of the men and women of the FBI Philadelphia field office who led this investigation. I also want to thank our outstanding partners at the U.S. Attorney's Office for their leadership, coordination, and courage to bring the wrongdoers to justice. I want to recognize the critical support of all FBI field offices that contributed to this case. This case represents a powerful example of what coordinated law enforcement can accomplish. When individuals choose to manipulate fair competition, they do more than commit financial crimes. They erode confidence in institutions that bring Americans together. The FBI exists to protect that trust, and when it is abused, we act. To the honest athletes, coaches, and officials who compete with integrity every day, the FBI stands with you. To those who choose corruption, fraud, and betrayal, we will find you, you will be investigated, and we will hold you accountable. Thank you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Special Agent in charge of our FBI field office here in Philadelphia.
All right, thank you, sir. I do want to begin with a thank you to you. Your presence here this morning means a lot to the office, means even more to the case team. Thank you. Thanks to the U.S. Attorney's Office, U.S. Attorney Metcalf, to the prosecutors here for your work. Obviously, without your work and support with respect to this investigation, none of what we're talking about here would have been possible. The legitimacy of sports rests on fair competition, earned outcomes, and honest play. We expect athletes to embody the very best of hard work, skill, and discipline, not to sell out to those seeking to corrupt the game for their own personal benefit. When money is used as a tool to influence outcomes, it does not just taint a single game, it tears at the trust in the results that we cherish. The crimes alleged in today's indictment are not victimless. This was a calculated scheme designed to manipulate outcomes, deceive fans, corrupt athletes, and undermine credibility of our leagues and institutions. Yesterday's indictment reflects our commitment to protecting the integrity of sports at every level. It marks the second time in just a few months that the work of the FBI has illuminated the scourge of sports bribery. While the indictment marks a significant step in our investigation, our work continues as we're committed to aggressively identifying, investigating, and charging others who seek to profit by fixing games. Behind every bet is a record of the transaction, a piece of data that we, along with our partners, are continuing to exploit to identify anomalies which may be indicators of similar behavior. This approach is enhanced by our partnerships with governing bodies and with regulatory and private sector partners who will continue to leverage to hold those to account and put an end to this conduct. Today's arrests and indictments would not have been possible without the tireless efforts of the employees of the FBI, the agents, the analysts, the professional staff, whose expertise, persistence, and commitment to justice over the past 2 years were the driving force behind this investigation. We're also grateful for the close coordination of the United States Attorney's Office, the support of our fellow FBI field offices, each of whom played a critical role in bringing this case together. This is a team sport. Defending against corruption relies on the awareness and action of all participants, both on the sidelines and on the court. Let each of us standing here today, side by side, serve as a clear warning to professional and collegiate athletes and to anyone who seeks to manipulate them that there is nowhere to hide. The short-term gain will never be worth the long-term loss. The consequences are real: federal criminal charges, permanent damage to careers, and lasting harm to reputations. These are the shots that no athletes should take. Thank you.
As the United States Attorney, I present this case in that capacity, but I do have to say that the true credit belongs to the line FBI agents and the two gentlemen beside me. They're the ones who built this case. It took a great degree of effort, grit, determination, the type of values that you would see in sports. I'm glad you said this is a team sport, because it is. And this case is a reflection of that and all the values that we expect from our sports institutions. A tremendous amount of credit has to go to the FBI for their diligent and zealous construction of such an immense and impactful case that spanned the country. It's the type of cases that we want to do, and it's really a great reflection of the merit, the excellence of the agents who built it. As I said, this is the corruption of college sports. There is a substantial interest, public interest, in the integrity of sports. A great value of American society is a free, fair, and level playing field. That's why we have antitrust laws to protect competition and commerce. We have insider trading laws to protect the integrity and a level playing field in securities markets. And that's why we have the Sports Bribery Act to protect the integrity of collegiate sports. Sports in many ways are a microcosm, a metaphor for American society and our values. It means something a great deal to us. And when criminals rig the outcome of games for the purpose to lose, rather than to win, we all lose. And that's why we're here today. This is a significant case. I'll take some questions in a moment. Before I do, I want to say the investigation is ongoing. As you can imagine, this is an extensive, significant, ongoing case. We will continue to investigate. I encourage everyone out there who has information about sports wagering in the NCAA or any professional sports who have information about this case or similar schemes to come forward and give Special Agent in charge Wayne Jacobs a call and the U.S. Attorney's Office a call so we can continue this fight. With that, I'm happy to take a few questions about this case. Yes, ma'am.
Are these men in custody, and what would charges like these fetch if we got to sentencing, as well as what does restitution look like?
Some are in custody, some are not. It varies by defendant. As I mentioned, there's 26 defendants. Look, the sports bribery charge carries a maximum penalty of 5 years. The fraud statutes carry a maximum penalty of 20 years. When you ask what type of penalties will it fetch, it depends on a calculus of sentencing guidelines, all sorts of different factors. I couldn't speculate on that now. It's going to vary by defendant, the offense conduct, the amount of loss, all that weighs into this. You would expect in a case like this, the leaders and orchestrators of the scheme would face significantly more imprisonment than, individuals who had a very discrete role or a minor role. Yes, sir.
David, prior to today, the 1951 scandal involving CCNY is known as the most infamous scheme in college basketball history. How do you view this in the lens of that case? Is today's case even more pervasive in your view?
It's tough to compare them. I don't know the exact scope of this case. I'm just speaking extemporaneously now, but I would imagine it rivals it. I mean, this is a pretty pervasive corruption scheme. As I mentioned, we're talking about dozens of games, athletes, 17 teams. I do view it as historic for that reason. Yes?
Could you pull out one example from the indictment of the LaSalle-St. Bonaventure game? It looks like the LaSalle players refused to cooperate. That's what I take from the...
So there were times, as we allege in the indictment, in which there was an attempted fix of the game. And for various reasons, either because the players either did not cooperate or they were actually cooperating but were unsuccessful, the game was not actually, did not have the outcome that the organizers or leaders hoped they would. There's 9 other players on the court. There's coaches and there's referees. Now in basketball, one player could substantially influence a game in ways in other sports you cannot. But it's not a guarantee. But by and large, the scheme was very successful. Yes, sir.
Just to follow up on her question, just because obviously we're caring about the Philadelphia tie here for a bunch of us here.
Yeah.
With the LaSalle game, did those players, I know you said sometimes they attempted to fix, did the players not take the money, or did they take the money and it wasn't successful? If you could speak to that.
I'm just going to refer you to the indictment on that. Look, in terms of the Philadelphia ties, I will say this. The case originated here. One of the defendants resides in this district. But more importantly, this is a nationally significant case with impact across districts, across offices, across jurisdictions and states. And our office wants to do these cases because they maximize the impact on public welfare. And in a case like this, of this complexion and gravity, all sorts of offices could bring those cases. It's a testament to the excellence of the FBI agents and these 2 gentlemen that our office brought it. And as I've said before, these are the type of cases our office wants to do, and we hope there'll be more to come on this score. Yes?
The 2 questions here real quick. The players that were caught, are they still in school? Have they been drafted by the pros? Do you have any idea what's going on?
It depends. It's tough to generalize when you ask questions about players. Some are professional basketball players in other leagues. Some are still in school. Yes, sir.
Just a few problem things. One, first of all, 5 of the players and I think they're charged elsewhere. Why was that the case? And secondly, obviously, 2 of the defendants that you charged were also charged in the Eastern District of New York for NBA poker gambling-related cases. The 2 offices work together? Do you see a relationship between your investigation and theirs?
Let me address the first question first. You said they're charged elsewhere. Do you mean in a separate charging instrument?
The indictment says charged elsewhere.
Yes. So as I point out, there are indictments and related filings in this case. The indictment unsealed today is not the only charging document. To address your second question about the ED&Y case, there is a relationship between the 2 cases. Yes, we have been in coordination with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Eastern District of New York. I'm glad you asked this question because I do think it's helpful to distinguish this case from that one. There are defendants in common, but fundamentally this is a different criminal scheme. If you read the Eastern District of New York indictment, It is fundamentally an insider trading case with a complexion of sports. The individuals in that case were making wagers on insider information, for example, injuries, to make money based on insider information, right? But there is a really important difference between wagering on predicted outcomes on insider information and wagering on determined outcomes, outcomes that you control. The former is a crime against sports betting markets. The latter is a crime against the sport itself. And that's what this case is about. That's what makes it different, in my opinion, worse. Yes?
Two questions. One, any connection to the Major League Baseball pitchers that are being investigated for?
Not that I'm aware of.
And then, I know you say millions of dollars. Any ballpark figure on how much these guys make?
Millions of dollars. Investigation is ongoing. You know, I don't want to give you a number because it could change a week from now as we develop evidence. Yes, sir.
What do you think it says about sports or society that these types of gambling investigations are becoming significantly more common?
I'm a prosecutor, you know, not a policymaker. I can't speak to that. You know, he mentioned the 1951 case. There have been a spate of these gambling cases recently. Now, I will say that the evidence in this case shows that the monetization of college athletics and athletics generally through the liberalization and proliferation of sports betting markets, as well as the normalization of compensation athletics, furthered the enterprise in this case. But it's complicated, right? I mean, as we allege in the indictment, you know, certain players were targeted because they were somewhat missing out on NIL money. And this was being done, they were being targeted so they could supplement their NIL compensation, you know. Whether or not they would have done or not done a particular crime based on whether other athletes are being paid or themselves, I don't know. Again, that's the question for policymakers to answer. What I will say is this. You know, we're not going to sit here on the sidelines while this regulatory landscape figures itself out. You know, the Department of Justice is going to step in. You know, as Deputy Director Bailey said, as Special Agent in Charge James said, we're going to step in to combat the corruption of this sport. You know, regulators and policymakers, I'm sure, will have to adapt to this, and everyone's figuring this out. I'm a sports fan. We're all figuring out this landscape. But we're going to act to make sure that this doesn't happen. Yes?
Last question I had was, the people that actually legitimately bet and legitimately lost, there's no recourse for them. They've lost their money.
I have no idea. I mean, that's not our decision to make. If you're talking about whether the sports books will refund their money, that's a question for them. I will say that the victims in this case span every sector of American life. You know, Deputy Director Bailey just mentioned the fans, right? You also have the honest athletes, the teammates of these players who are working their tail off. You know, I'll speak personally for a moment. I'm a college athlete. Jerome's a college basketball player. You know, we all wake up every day to hard work with a team. You know, we mentioned it's a team sport. As a collective, you know, sports taught me everything that I know. Every good quality I have is from sports. You know, hard work, adversity, learning how to lose. This totally flies in the face of all of that. And we lose a lot. Everyone is victimized by this case. It's not just the people who lost money on the sports betting games. That's what I hope I would convey to you, is to think of the victims in this case in a far more broad way. Yes, sir?
Can you elaborate at all more on how these guys were so seemingly able to access so many players so easily?
Yeah, I think, again, that is a critical part of the scheme. I'm glad you asked that question. Because the leaders of this conspiracy, we allege, were successful because of their connections in the college basketball world, and it varied, both formally and informally. They were players, they were recruiters, they were trainers. You know, defendant by defendant, again, I would just refer you to the indictment. One more question, yes?
How did you first get knowledge of the scheme? Obviously, I see that it says she's just going to try and task the answer.
I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not going to divulge sources and methods. What I will say, again, is repeat, you know, my ask to everyone, if you have information about this scheme or others, to please pick up the phone and give us a call. Thank you, everyone, for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Are you Jalen Smith?
We're good.
Not the
Thanks.
Chicago Bulls player, right?
There's all those things that all is so hard to special agent. Just getting that little special agent charge. What is that charge?
For the FBI.
Oh, is that the same one? Oh, okay. I took it.